I've been on the hunt for the perfect wireless keyboard for a couple years now, and the Logitech G613 is not perfect, but I think it's the best we can do right now as far as wireless keyboards go. Now, before I tell you why I think it's the best, let's go over the basic features of this keyboard here. So this keyboard is a full-size mechanical keyboard. It has Romer G switches, and that's gonna be either a love it or hate it thing. Some people love the switches, some people don't. I actually kind of like the switches. What I think is more important than the switch though is gonna be the keycaps. So things like the Orion Spark has the same switch, but I actually really dislike those keycaps because they're really angled and they're really hard to type on. And if you're familiar with it, it's used in a lot of other Logitech gaming keyboards. I'll play a quick sound demo of what it sounds like typing on it right now. Now, one notable thing about the build is that this thing is pretty heavy and it is really solid, and it is plastic, but kind of putting a little bit of pressure on it. Doesn't really creak or make a whole lot of noise. Build quality here, I would have preferred a more premium material like metal, of course, but at the price and the quality of the plastic that they are using, it's hard to complain. This keyboard also has 6 programmable G keys on the side, game switch mode, light speed and Bluetooth buttons, and multimedia keys on the top right. Quick note on the buttons up here, they all feel a little bit cheap, and for the volume buttons, I would have preferred a scroll wheel so that you can kind of quickly scroll rather than having to press and hold or keep pressing to go up, a few extra levels of volume. And I think by now we all kind of understand that peripherals for a desk are going to be really subjective in terms of what you like, what you need, and what you don't need. And there are a lot of considerations for what you find personally important in a keyboard. You may not need the macro G keys on the side. You may not need a number pad or the multimedia keys. So there's parts of this keyboard that I think for most people are gonna be completely unneeded, and you'll probably never use it or not regularly use it, and you could definitely go without it. But I think for the majority of people, and part of the reason why I think this is the best wireless keyboard you can get, is I think it's better to have extra functionality than not enough functionality. So what specifically about this keyboard makes it stand out from the competition as the best wireless keyboard? And it's one major thing, and it's gonna be the Lightspeed tech that's in it. It's branded Lightspeed from Logitech. So as far as wireless tech goes, Logitech's Lightspeed is on the top of the heap. Like, they're the best of the best. And it's been proven time and time again to be indistinguishable from the best wired mice and wired keyboards that are out there right now. So there's no real downsides besides the fact that you have to power it off of batteries. And speaking of batteries and battery life, that's really one of the key features as to why I think this is the best. Lightspeed tech is crazy efficient and it lasts a really long time. Right now, Logitech is claiming 18 months on a set of AA batteries, which is really, really impressive. I haven't had this keyboard long enough to verify that for myself, but I do have the G305 wireless mouse and the 603. And both of those use Lightspeed tech, and my battery life has been consistent with what they say online. So I have every reason to believe that Logitech is being legitimate here. Now, with heavy usage, I think that 18 months is a little optimistic. I think it probably would last for a little bit less. I think that's a relatively efficient user, but even still, that's a lot better than even most Bluetooth keyboards have, with none of the downsides for actual performance. So the subjective stuff in terms of like what switches you prefer and the feel of the keyboard, that stuff is not gonna be really in the calculation of what's the best here, because that's gonna vary person to person to person. But the measurable stuff like battery life and the Lightspeed tech that's in here and all the functionality of the keyboard itself, that all is really strong considerations for why this is the best. So even though I'm calling it the best, I don't think it may be the best for person A, but I think it's gonna fit person B, C, D, and E really, really well. Now, like I said earlier, I think this is the best you can currently buy, but it's not perfect and there are some downsides. So there are no lit keys on here. So it hasn't been a problem for me because it does have white text, and when I'm using it with a monitor, I can see that even in a completely dark room. But some people really like the lights. For me, in my preferences, I prefer not having to worry about this thing's battery for like a year over having some lights that I don't really need anyways. And the no lights was undoubtedly to save battery life. Now, the other downside to this keyboard is that it is big. It's big in terms of width, it's big in terms of height, and it does have a non-detachable wrist rest, which I think for some people, they're not gonna mind. For other people, I think it should have been detachable. Now, I personally don't mind it because I've been able to acclimate okay to it, but all my other keyboards before, I have not used a wrist rest, so I'd prefer it to be detachable or not really there at all. To be completely candid with you, I'm not sure why they attached it on here. I don't think most people use keyboards with wrist rests, but they obviously have more statistical data to back up this choice than I do. And then the last downside is that there's actually a little bit of a metallic ringing when you're typing. Now, it's not super noticeable, and I'll do a little bit of a sound test here so you can kind of pick that up. Some Amazon reviews for the user reviews actually complain about it, a lot of the 1-star reviews, but I think for the majority of the people, they're not really gonna notice it, and even if you do notice it, it's not really gonna bug you that much. I notice it, and it doesn't really bug me that much, and I think the upsides far outweigh the downsides for this keyboard. And that will lead me into the conclusion of this. There are some downsides and some things that you may not want. Like if you need a smaller keyboard, like a 10 keyless keyboard, then you're gonna know that you need that. But if you're okay with the full-size platform, and you're okay with a couple of minor downsides, nothing completely crippling in my opinion, but an overall really, really solid keyboard with stellar performance, stellar battery life, just out of this world in terms of a wireless keyboard, and nothing really else on the market for the price competes from what I've been able to find. And more importantly, it's all that wrapped up into a fairly reasonably priced package. I think it's about $80, which for a mechanical keyboard is about average nowadays with all the functionality that this has, all the G keys, but considering the fact that it is wireless and you do have the option of Bluetooth to plug into a phone or another computer or a laptop or an iPad, all that functionality and this build quality gets combined into a really well-made, really well-functioning keyboard, but for not a really high price. Now, Logitech also has a new Lightspeed keyboard called the G915. This keyboard looks great. It's really low profile and it does have lights, and it is a mechanical keyboard as well, but the price is crazy. It's like $250 right now. Hopefully, because there's been a lot of complaints, like it's got a 2-star review right now on Amazon. There's a lot of complaints about the price, and Logitech dropped the price to the 613 by about half really quickly after launch. I'm hoping that they do the same thing with the G915. But the one major downside for that keyboard is that the battery life is about 30 hours because it does have to power those lights. It lasts for a significantly less amount of time than the 613 does. And that for me makes it a product that's not really enticing for me to go out and get, even if it was half the price. I think I'd still pick this just for the kind of not having to ever worry about charging it. But that keyboard may be more enticing to use, so I'll leave a link to that one down below as well. All right, guys, I think that's gonna wrap it up. If you wanna see more keyboard reviews and mouse reviews and gaming peripherals, desk peripherals, stuff like that, for me, let me know in the comment section down below. If you haven't seen me before, I actually do a lot of headphone reviews. So if you're interested in that sort of stuff, definitely hit that subscribe button and stick around. All right.